Warning: the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, winner of the National Radio Hall of Fame Award, Michael Savage.
Anyone who actually took the time to study the footage of Charlottesville will understand what actually happened. So let me repeat it for you. As repugnant as some on the right are, the KKK, the Nazis, we all know that. I don't know who supports them, but some do. There were others amongst them who were simply there because they did not want to see a piece of their heritage destroyed. That is the statue of Robert E. Lee. Somehow they all got lumped in as Ku Klux Klan and Nazis. That's what the press specializes in, which is smearing anyone who doesn't agree with their Bolshevik agenda. Okay? On the other side were the good, loving, peace-loving, peaceful, leftist protesters who were wearing helmets. One of them had a flamethrower. It's a very famous picture from Getty Images. Flamethrower, shooting it at the other guys. Rocks, stones, feces, urine, bricks, rocks, sticks, hitting people, and there was an altercation. So there's plenty of blame to go around. And the president said there was violence on both sides and there's blame to go around. But that wasn't good enough for the propagandists. They went berserk. I think the president showed himself to be a good leader in a very, very inflammatory time. He tried to be a man of compromise, and they wouldn't have it. So now you have it. Now you see it for what it is. I told you I watched the Civil War series last night for 2 straight hours. I intend to watch the rest of it tonight from 1990. And I told you that the historian said that we were a nation of compromise before the Civil War, and somehow because we lost the ability to compromise, the Civil War grew and grew and grew, and it got worse. The president just tried to find common ground. He tried to find compromise. And who was it who would not compromise? Your friends in the media. Your friends in the propaganda arm of the International Bolshevik Party that is trying to take over the entire world.
Savage.
That was the end of yesterday's program. I thought I'd replay it for those of you who see this as an ongoing serial going back to 1994. The shows are not disconnected. They're very deeply connected. And, of course, today's show is related to yesterday's show, as will tomorrow's show be connected to today's show and yesterday and yesterday and yesterday's show. So the question for today on the Savage Nation is this. Are you ready for this? Are you ready? Is slavery still relevant today? I put it up on the Twitter feed 30 minutes ago, 33 minutes ago. Lots of people have opinions on it. And today you're going to learn that slavery is very relevant. Oh, yes, it's very relevant, but not in America where it doesn't exist. Slavery exists around the world. Not one of the so-called leftists or any of the uneducated dolts in the media will talk about the slavery that exists in the world. I will talk about it. Now, this morning, on the way to the radio station, I tuned into another show. I will not say who, but a high school dropout who poses as the greatest mind in the history of conservative radio got me so angry I felt I had to call him out on this. And I will tell you why. A high school dropout on radio stated that the U.S. was the first nation to end slavery to one of his callers. That is a complete lie and falsehood. And what bothers me is that ignoramuses on the right do more harm to the conservative movement than do the left. They do us no favor by disseminating lies and historical distortions. The U.S. was not the first nation to end slavery. This is the problem with those on the right. Most of them are very, very poorly educated. They have no scholarly background. They don't bother to research anything, and all it does is make all of us look like ignoramuses. But since I'm quite educated and, let's say, well-versed in history, I will tell you the U.S. was not the first nation to ban slavery. It was one of the last. In 1787, the Society for the Abolition of the Slave Trade was founded in Britain, founded in 1787. The abolition of the slave trade. England started the abolition in 1787. 1792, Denmark bans import of slaves to its West Indies colonies. colonies. 1807, Britain passes abolition of the Slave Act. 1811, Spain abolishes slavery, even in its colonies. 1813, Sweden bans slave trading. 1814, Netherlands bans slave trading. 1817, France bans slave trading. 1833, Britain passes Abolition of Slavery Act, ordering the gradual abolition of slavery in all British colonies. The plantation owners in the West Indies received 20 million pounds in compensation. It's an interesting fact right there. 1819, Portugal abolished the slave trade north of the equator. 1846, Danish governor proclaims emancipation of slaves in Danish West Indies, abolishing slavery. 1848, France abolishes slavery. 1851, Brazil abolishes slave trading. 1858, Portugal abolishes slavery. 1861, Netherlands abolishes slavery in Dutch Caribbean colonies. 1862, Lincoln proclaims emancipation of slaves with effect from January 1863. 13th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution follows in 1865, banning slavery. There is no slavery in America. 1886, slavery is abolished in Cuba. 1888, Brazil abolishes slavery. That's a little thumbnail sketch of who banned slavery and when. And as I say, ignoramuses on the right who do not know their history only do us great harm by disseminating lies which anyone can look through. But slavery still exists today, only we don't talk about it. Joel Galertner of the National Review studied this, and he said in a single country, India, which is the worst offender, in India there are currently 18.5 million slaves, 18.5 million slaves. There are 6.5 million more slaves in India right now than were imported to North America, South America, Central America, and the Caribbean islands combined during the entire history of the transatlantic slave trade. 373 years from Columbus's discovery of the Americas to the end of the Civil War. So there's great slavery. But there are modern slaves being held in Central and East Asia, Central Africa. The top 10 slaveholding countries on the list in total slaves are India, China, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Uzbekistan, North Korea, Russia, Nigeria, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Indonesia. Among them, 30.25 million slaves, which is 100 times more than the total number of slaves imported to the United States and territories that would become part of the U.S. This is very, very important. Will this affect any of the Marxist professors who are up there with a memorial to the girl who was run down in Charlottesville? Of course not. They are demagogues right out of Animal Farm. I have a question for the audience. What if someone on the right, let us say not a Ku Klux Klan member or a Nazi, but let's say if it was a Ku Klux Klan member or a Nazi, or let us say an innocent conservative who didn't want their heritage destroyed, was run over by a leftist, do you think the media would be screaming about it today? Are you joking? Are you telling me Jake Tapper, who has the brains of a woodpecker who's been denied food for a year, you think that woodpecker on television knows the difference between what he is doing and what Goebbels did for Hitler? Do you think Wolf Blitzer, Mr. Blinky Good Guy, would change his tune? No, he wouldn't. No, he wouldn't. They'd still be pushing the Bolshevik Revolution in the United States of America. So that's the pickle that we're in. And today is the 16th of August, 2017. Instead of cruising into autumn, we are burning into autumn. Is slavery still relevant today is the question of the day. There are many other topics, and there are many other things I'm going to do today, including reading about the funeral for Boxer in Animal Farm, because the funeral today in Charlottesville, as sad as it is to see this young girl killed for no reason, I'm sorry to tell you, when I saw Terry McAuliffe and the commie professors getting up there with crocodile tears for a girl they never met, I thought I was watching a reenactment of Animal Farm, especially Chapter 9, The Death of Boxer, because the left always uses martyrdom and martyrs in order to push their Bolshevik agenda down our throat, don't they? Remember the Matthew Shepard story? This poor girl in Charlottesville is now the new Matthew Shepard. There will be a movie. There will be a TV series. Katzenberg, Matzenberg, and Ratzenberg are already working overtime, I am sure, to create an around-the-clock remembrance of this event in Charlottesville. Meanwhile, the slaves are suffering around the world. The phone number to you, is slavery still relevant today, is 855 400Savage. The Twitter feed is, what is my Twitter handle? I don't even know. Here it is, Michael Savage. It's at a Savage Nation. At a Savage Nation. And I will be right back to take your calls.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. Welcome back to the Kandinsky of Talk Radio. Or you can call me the Moses of Talk Radio. You can call me the Frankenstein of Talk Radio. Call me the Einstein of Talk Radio. You can call me anything you want, but my name is Michael Savage. And we're talking about one question today, which is slavery still relevant today? If you missed my opening, please do not call the show. It means that you're a typical straggler and you get everything out of context. There was a great African-American leader named Booker T. Washington. In fact, Booker T. Washington was perhaps the greatest black leader until perhaps Martin Luther King Jr., but in some ways Booker T. Washington did more. He was from the last generation of black American leaders born into slavery. He was actually born into slavery. And between 1890 and 1915, Booker T. Washington was the dominant leader in the African-American community. He founded many things. He wrote great books. Mainly he talked about compromise. And, of course, he was opposed by the radical blacks and the radical commie whites. By the way, we no longer call them liberals. There will no one on this show who will call them will ever refer to the word liberal or socialist again. As of yesterday, I hereby declare all those on the left Bolsheviks. And soon you will hear the word Bolshevik being used repeatedly on all radio shows, as sure as I'm sitting here. We're watching a Bolshevik revolution occur in the United States of America. The leaders of it are very clear, and the Democrat Party is the Bolshevik Party of today. But anyway, getting back to Booker T. Washington, God, the time is so short, there's so much to do. Booker T. Washington was a very powerful man who wrote a great book, and as I said, born into slavery, emancipated, highly educated, and he was named the first leader of the new Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. He was a popular spokesman for African-American citizens. He built huge support with black people, black ministers, educators, businessmen. And it kept growing and growing. National leaders, white and black, came to him. He raised funds, opened new small rural schools in the South. And Washington argued that the surest way for blacks to gain social rights was to demonstrate industry, thrift, intelligence, and property. Oh, my God, what a long way we've come. How far we've come, Jesse Hy Jackson. Demonstrating industry, thrift, intelligence, and property. But he was opposed by some blacks, especially the leaders of the new NAACP, who is now behind tearing down the Robert E. Lee statues. You see, the NAACP is not this benign group that you may think it is. Read about the NAACP, especially W.E.B. Du Bois, who were into heavy, heavy-duty protest. Now let's move on. He wrote 14 books, including Up From Slavery. Great book. It's still read in the schools today. And he warned that in order to overcome pervasive racism in the long run, we need to compromise. Yes, he funded litigation for civil rights cases. But he warned this, and listen carefully to me. All you Bolsheviks, we know who you are, we know what you're doing. Washington warned that confrontation will lead to disaster for the outnumbered blacks in society, and that cooperation with supportive whites was the only way to overcome pervasive racism in the long run. Listen to me very carefully. We do not want another civil war in this country, nor do you. If you are an agitator, if you are one of these college dumbbell agitators, be aware of something. Nobody wins in war. Now, Booker T. Washington is quoted widely. I'm going to read one quote that's very important for you to hear. This is Booker T. Washington. There is another class of colored people who make a business of keeping the troubles, the wrongs, and the hardships of the Negro race before the public. Having learned that they are able to make a living out of their troubles, they have grown into the settled habit of advertising their wrongs, partly because they want sympathy and partly because it pays. Boy, did he ever see Jesse Hyde Jackson and Al Sharpton and the other race baiters. He certainly saw in his deep vision Barack Hussein Obama. Boy, did Obama cash in on something he never suffered from. And he's still cashing that check. He hasn't stopped yet. What else do you want me to say? You got more in this opening 25 minutes that you're going to get than you're going to get anywhere else for the rest of the week. I can guarantee you. You got a dose of reality, a dose of history, a dose of futurism, and a dose of me. KSFO, Damon, line 7, go ahead, please. Is slavery still relevant today?
Absolutely. And speaking on Booker T. Washington, one of the things that I would say that white people loved about his speech, The Great Compromise, was that he encouraged black people to be second-hand citizens in a sense.
All right. Okay, give me the rest of your dialogue. We're all thrilled with your eloquence. So what is relevant about what is relevant about slavery today? Didn't we just have a black president and a black attorney general? I mean, what is relevant about it?
Because we had a black president, everything is all right, and we can all join hands and sing.
All right, so what is it that you want from America? Tell me what you want.
In America.
I said, what is it that you want then?
Okay, now you talk about, I'm from Virginia. As a child, growing up in Virginia, we had Lee Jackson King Day on Martin Luther King's birthday. We celebrated the leader of the Confederate Army, of the Confederate general, before we even celebrated.
I don't understand what you're saying. I'm asking you, what is it that you want from American society? What is it you're demanding?
Is it still relevant? We got to be honest. We got to be honest and stop sugarcoating it and talk about this heritage. Is this the heritage that you are proud of? Are you proud of somebody like me?
Well, first of all, the South lost the war, and it's time for them to get over it. I said that yesterday. What is this, the first time you've tuned into the show?
You asked a question if it's relevant and why so.
No, I asked the question. I didn't ask a question. An axe is used to cut down a cherry tree.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
And if you just tune in, you can take anything out of context. If you listen, you understand who I am and where I'm coming from. And let me repeat it again. I'll repeat it over and over again. The black people in America are now being used by the white communists or the Bolsheviks, more specifically. The Bolsheviks in the media, the Bolsheviks in academia, the Bolsheviks on the left are once again using black people, Hispanic people, and others to advance their Bolshevik agenda, to the detriment of all of us. Make no mistake about what I am saying. Listen very carefully to what I said. They are stirring up a hornet's nest, wanting riots, wanting mayhem, and wanting social dissolution. The left is relentless in its desire to burn and break things because they have a sick image that when you destroy everything, you rebuild it in your own image. That is what they're doing right now. And so what happened in Charlottesville is a symptom rather than the actual war. It's a symptom of the Bolshevik Revolution on both sides. And, of course, I don't want to go into who did what. It's unimportant. Just watch the footage yourself. And Trump was 1,000% right in saying there's enough blame to go around. And thank God he had the guts to stand up to the phonies in the media, the Bolshevik stooges. That's all I can say. And the question for us today is slavery still relevant today? And that's what we're talking about. People want to walk around with this attitude that they personally suffered from it. Good luck to them. It's a free country. And if you have that attitude, I can guarantee you one thing, as sure as I'm sitting here, you will never get ahead in life. You'll be in prison your entire life because you're acting as though you are still imprisoned. You will be imprisoned. If you can't be free in your mind, you can't be free in your body. I hope you understand what I just said to you. And it doesn't just apply to African Americans who are trapped in this idea that they are still somehow oppressed in this country. It applies to people of the Jewish faith, in my opinion, which I've said many times, and I'll say it again, because I knew many of them, and I ran from them, because they had this idea that the Holocaust is the defining, or was the defining moment of Judaism. That's the furthest thing from the truth. Just as slavery should never be forgotten, but put behind you in order for you to move forward, the Jewish people should remember that while the Holocaust must never be forgotten, it must not become your defining moment as a Jew. Your Jewishness is about your religion, not about the Holocaust. If you politicize your religion with this act of horror that was inflicted upon maybe your ancestors, maybe not, what you do is you walk around with an attitude that imprisons you, with anger, with hatred, with resentment, and it imprisons you in a way that you could never even understand until you're free of those imprisonments. Maybe I'm talking to myself right now. It's hard to know. I think some are hearing me, but most aren't. I think people are so wrapped up in their victimhood in America today they can't hear a word I'm saying. I want to diverge for a moment. Last night I watched the second part of the Civil War on PBS. It was done in 1990. I watched it last. I couldn't watch the whole thing. I had to stop. I got as far as Shiloh, the Battle of Shiloh, a little country church. It was named for Shiloh, a Hebrew word for peace. I think 16,000 men died in one day at Shiloh during the Civil War. 16,000 innocent white boys killed each other. Killed each other in the North, killed each other in the South. Over what? I will tell you again so that you learn your history, because those of you who do not know your history are condemned to repeat it. Abraham Lincoln did not begin the Civil War to end slavery. Maybe that's what you think is true, but it's not true. Abraham Lincoln certainly opposed slavery. That's a given fact. But Lincoln initiated the Civil War because the South seceded from the Union. And Lincoln did not want secession. He did not want the Union broken up. And he said, we will fight at all costs to make sure there's no secession of Southern states. It was only after the war had begun and was not going well that Lincoln decided to make slavery the dominant issue of the Civil War in order to unify more people behind him, because it had become a very unpopular war. Too many Northern boys were being slaughtered by this war. They were being shot down, mowed down like grass. And so you have to understand the reality of the Civil War to understand what you're talking about. Does it really matter at this point when we're living through another Civil War in America? Another Civil War promoted by Barack Obama and Eric Holder for 8 straight years? We didn't have enough of Jesse Hyde Jackson. We didn't have enough of that street rat Al Sharpton. Then we elected Obama. Who elected Obama? Mainly white people elected Obama because he said he was a uniter. He spent 8 straight years promulgating race hatred in the country, but in the most subtle way you can imagine. He was so good at it that while he was promoting racial division, he made believe he wasn't. And these days that we are living through now are, in my opinion, biblical in that there's a biblical statement, he who sows the wind shall reap the whirlwind. We are reaping and weeping the whirlwind of Barack Obama's 8 years of hatred. And it's time to quit it. Knock it off. Cut it out. Don't be manipulated. You college students, you're well-meaning. You think that you're doing good, but you're a stooge, you're a tool, you're a puppet of your communist Bolshevik professors. They're using you. You will not benefit from this civil unrest. Your careers will go nowhere. Your life will go nowhere. You'll make nothing of your life. Those of you who are of color, if you want me to put it to you that way, I hope that's sensitive enough, just understand you're being manipulated by the Bolsheviks again. It is the white Bolshevik professors who are using the African-American community to their own advantage of pushing the Bolshevik agenda. But this requires knowledge, this requires history, this requires civility, this requires reason, and I'm afraid those factors are no longer relevant to too many in this country. One other note, please, about television. So last night, after I couldn't watch the Civil War anymore, the PBS series, I couldn't take looking at the dead boys on the ground. I couldn't stand looking at it anymore. It no longer was a war movie. It was all the families destroyed by the Civil War. I couldn't watch it. I turned it off, and I switched to a movie. I don't know how I wound up on another movie, a movie done in 1990 about the artist Jackson Pollock. I know it's like, what are you doing here? Well, just listen to what I'm doing here. So I watched the movie, Pollock, about Jackson Pollock. I had seen it in snippets before and didn't like it. I thought it was too menopausal. It was just made for, older women who wanted to relive their youth in some way and have a vicarious feeling that they were having a fling with a wild, crazy artist on East Hampton in 1949. But then I watched it with a new set of eyes, and I came to enjoy what they were trying to say in that movie, Pollock, who broke through in his modern art, if you want to call it that, abstract art, using drip painting, which had not been originated by him. He copied drip painting from, I believe, Asian artists or French artists. I think Jean Miro did it first, incidentally. But nevertheless, because he introduced drip painting in America, and he got great, great support from his wife, who he then screwed by running around with another woman, and a great agent and artist and all of that. Life magazine gave him a 4-page spread. He became world famous, became a very rich man, but he died an alcoholic in a car crash anyway at age 44. Putting the death aside, I became very interested in Jackson Pollock for a moment. It's not that I never heard of him. So I was reading that his painting sold for as much as $132 million. I couldn't believe the number. $132 million, maybe more by today. Okay, and he was struggling, he had nothing when he was an artist. And then someone said, why are Jackson Pollock's paintings worth millions of dollars? It was an article written a number of years ago. And it said if you Google his name, or if you search his name for Jackson Pollock, you get something like 1 million responses, or whatever it's called, hits in the search engine. So I Googled my name, Michael Savage, and 6 million came up. I Googled Michael Savage, 6 million. Google my name, Michael Savage. You'll get 6 million references to me. 6 million. 6 million. I said, this is pretty awesome because I don't really know this. I live in my own world. I'm a voice in the wilderness. I broadcast primarily from isolated locations on my own. And I don't really know who I'm reaching. I know my books are bestsellers. Trump's War, Government Zero, Stop the Coming Civil War, Scorched Earth, one after the other. One bestseller after another. And yet I am vilified by the Bolshevik media. Although I'm more famous than some of the most famous artists in American history, the people who run the TV media, the Bolsheviks, have never in recent years had me on their shows. Why is that? Why do you think I am not allowed on Fox News, CNN, or MSNBC? Because the Bolsheviks don't want an intelligent competitor who can run them off the road with sheer logic. That's the answer. Do you understand the propaganda we are facing today? They do not want an educated man on the right because I violate the stereotype that they want to paint of some knuckle-dragging Nazi. Do you understand that or not? Not all people on the right support the Nazi movement. Most don't. Most conservatives do not support the Ku Klux Klan. Most don't. And we are sick of you tar-brushing us as members of the Ku Klux Klan and the Nazis because we are not, and we're sick of it. And trust me, if you keep this up, you're going to be the big loser, not us. Why do I say it? Because the vast middle ground, the vast middle, mainly of white people, are not stupid. And they are not Ku Klux Klan members. Maybe they're just fiscal conservatives. Maybe that average housewife who swung the election in favor of Donald Trump is not even a social conservative, but she is a fiscal conservative. And she doesn't want Jerry Brown robbing her of her hard-earned money with 15% state tax. Maybe she is tired of having her children being taught they're evil because they're of Caucasian descent. Maybe they just got fed up with 8 years of hatred towards white people. Watch out, because what you wish for may not happen. In fact, the polar opposite may happen, Terry McAuliffe. Trust me on this. The biggest loser in the Charlottesville thing is Terry McAuliffe. It looks like he orchestrated this with the police in order to stand up and be seen by the world. And we saw him. This is the man in Virginia who thinks he will be the next president. What we saw was a very, very shallow, brittle man with no depth whatsoever. That man is not going to be the next president. It's going to be a sleeper. It's going to be a dark horse. It's going to be someone you may not have heard of on the national scene. It will not be a far left. It will not be a Bolshevik leftist, I can guarantee you. It will not be Elizabeth Warren. It will not be Hillary Clinton. It will not be Terry McAuliffe. It'll be some dark horse on the left who is a moderate Democrat. As sure as I'm sitting here, mark these words down because I am usually right.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. It's the middle of the night, and what happens? Maybe you're tossing and turning covered in sweat. You could run the AC all night, but you really want to do that? Why don't you just get rid of your heat-trapping mattress and sleep as cool as the other side of the pillow is, as I do on my great Casper mattress? What is it? It's 2 high-tech foams, which guarantee you that you sleep cool, comfortable, and fully supported every night. It ships to you for free in a box that's so small you won't even believe it holds a mattress. Right, it's that small. Casper does that so that you can try it risk-free for 100 nights in your own home. Risk-free. You don't love it? They'll come pick it up and refund you everything. From its breakthrough design and superior quality to its packaging and 100-night in-home trial, it's no wonder Casper was named one of Fast Company's 50 most innovative brands of 2017. So try your Casper for 100 nights with free shipping and returns. All you got to do is go to Casper.com, code SAVAGE. You get $50 off the purchase of your mattress. Write it down. Casper.com, code SAVAGE. You're going to get $50 off the purchase of your mattress. Casper.com. Terms and conditions do apply. We're talking about a very heavy topic today. Is slavery still relevant today? I really didn't even finish my thought on Pollock in the last hour. I wanted to finish it up. And I wanted to say that if Pollock, Jackson Pollock, a free thinker, were alive today, if there was an abstract artist who was alive today, and there are many of them, they're listening to the show and they would agree with me. Because I represent freedom of thought. I represent thinking. I represent vision. I represent everything that an artist is supposed to represent because I am an artist. Forget that I'm not using paints or I'm not sculpting. I'm creating art for you. Sometimes art is better than reality in getting a message across. And I'm trying to use all of my education and all of my talents to remind you of one principal thing, which is that civil war is the worst thing that could happen to a nation. And if you permit the Bolsheviks in the media, I don't have to name them, you know who they are. If you permit the Bolsheviks in academia, if you permit the Bolsheviks in government itself to push us to another conflagration, we all lose. Compromise, compromise, compromise is the only solution. I wake up this morning and I see the Bolsheviks pushed some radicals in the South to disinter the grave of a Confederate general. To disinter the grave of a Confederate general. Vigilante protesters start digging up body of Confederate general and KKK leader Nathan Forrest from his grave. Confederate statues, disinterring corpses. This is becoming nightmarish. And it's not coming unto it. It's not arriving on its own. This dark horseman of the apocalypse is not coming on its own. It is being fueled by the Marxist professors and the Bolsheviks in the media. Where does this end? Where does it end? Will they dig up my body when I am gone? Will they dig up the body of Rush Limbaugh and burn it on a pyre? Will the Bolsheviks, after they have extinguished all of the images of the Civil War, go for the books written by men like Michael Savage and burn them and call it freedom? Will they put my books in a bonfire and burn them? Do you understand where we're going or not? You have to stop them now. Hitler could have been stopped at Munich, And had Hitler been stopped at Munich, there would have been no World War II, and millions wouldn't have died around the world. This war that is brewing because of Obama's 8 years of race baiting and hatred must be stopped now, and it can only be stopped with compromise and reason.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage. Warning: the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, winner of the National Radio Hall of Fame Award, Michael Savage.
It is the Savage Nation Part 2. If you just tuned in, I can't catch you up. You've got to learn to show up to class on time, and I can't go backwards an hour to go forward another 2 hours. So I'm going to begin with the callers right now. I quoted Booker T. Washington. I showed you where slavery was first banned and when. I try to correct the record of ignoramuses in the media, mainly on the right, who have the audacity to say that the United States was the first nation to ban slavery. That really frosts me because it's a big lie, and all it does is show the falsehood of people on the conservative side, and you'll start to think that we're all uneducated adults, which we're not. Some of us are really highly educated, and some of us are not. And some of us who are not should not be stating facts like that, which are not facts. Now, slavery was not first ended in the United States of America. That is a total falsehood, and that you need an apology from the man who said that. It was not the United States who was first. The United States was one of the last nations to ban slavery. That's number one. And then I went into the whole issue of, is slavery still relevant today? Is slavery still relevant today? And I have some great comments on that. And we talked about where slavery still exists in the world today. And it exists in many countries right now, the number one country being India. But there are others. And we read the list from the great article in National Review by Joel Galertner. And the 10 slaveholding countries that are largest are pretty amazing. Pretty amazing, the list. And the number of slaves is awesome. Modern slaves are held in Central and East Asia, Central Africa. The top 10 slaveholding countries on the list today in total slaves are India, China, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Uzbekistan, North Korea, Russia, Nigeria, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Indonesia. Yet you hear nothing about it. Why you hear nothing about it, I told you, is because the Bolshevik professors, they will not be called liberals again. Will not be calling communists again. Will not be calling them socialists again. The new word that you will be using from now on this show is Bolshevik, because they are the Bolsheviks of America of today. I include in that list of Bolsheviks the entire media, without exception. Television media, it's all Bolshevik, including Fox News. Fox News is an arm of the new Bolshevik revolution on the world stage. So refer to liberals as Bolsheviks from now on. You'll see it'll be used very soon. In this hour, we'll take your calls on that topic. And I want to read you again the statement by Booker T. Washington, one of the great black leaders who was actually born a slave but didn't remain a slave. He actually worked in salt mines to get the money together to go to school. He didn't walk around screaming about slavery. He became a great leader and a great man. And Booker T. Washington said this: "There is another class of colored people who make a business of keeping the troubles, the wrongs, and the hardships of the Negro race before the public. Having learned that they're able to make a living out of their troubles, they have grown into the settled habit of advertising their wrongs, partly because they want sympathy and partly because it pays." Amen. My friends, we are in trouble. The Bolshevik media is the number one engine of hatred in this country. The Bolshevik media, even though they may look like your neighbor, are not your neighbor. The Bolshevik media may look like nice men and nice women, but they're not nice men and nice women. Be careful. Be very careful. KFAY Radio, Andrew, line 3. Go ahead. You're up on the Savage Nation. What's on your mind?
Yeah, my quick anecdote was there was a Salvadorian guy in Houston who stuck his arm in a cement mixer and twisted it off at the shoulder. And because he was illegal, he wasn't allowed, like, workers' comp, or he couldn't sue his employer. So his employer basically, like, took all the money that they were reaping from his labor and paying him like $9 an hour or whatever. And then when it came time to pay out for, his injury, they were just like, you're not a citizen, you don't have rights. So my anecdote to slavery is that basically the Chamber of Commerce lobbies to have these people come in, but then they have no rights, so then they're basically slaves. They're packed in like,
All right, so what is the solution to the illegal aliens living here, the millions and millions of them, the 30, 40 million? It's not 9 or 11, it's not 11 million. That's the same number that the Bolshevik media has been putting out since Bill Clinton's time. It's about 40 million illegals here. What would you do with that situation?
Try to hook them up with an abogado somewhere, I guess, right? A lawyer somewhere that can maybe make them, have them pay something, because that's how you do it legitimately.
Really? What about the idea that they shouldn't be here to begin with? Then they wouldn't have these troubles.
Well, they wouldn't. And the direct person, the perpetrator, is the Chamber of Commerce. It's allowing these employers to hire these people.
Well, you're raising a very sensitive and important issue that's related to this whole issue of slavery. Yes, many illegal aliens are treated like slaves, not quite as horrendously, thank God, but they live in near slave-like conditions, and America owes it to itself to straighten this out by blocking their importation from the South and by deporting all of those here illegally who are troublemakers, which is what Donald Trump is trying to do by starting with the gang members. I want to be clear. I've been on record for over 15 years with the same message. Begin by deporting the prisoners who are here illegally. 1/3 of our prison population, 1/3 of our prison population are illegal aliens who never belonged here to begin with. They're costing us billions of dollars a month. Begin by deporting the gang members as Trump is doing, and then clear out the prisons. 1/3 of prisoners are illegal aliens. They don't belong here. Deport them. That's number 2, but that's a separate problem. We're talking about racism. We're talking about, is slavery still relevant today? So let me ask you a question. Is La Raza racist? Of course it is. The word La Raza means the race. La Raza doesn't mean all races. It doesn't mean civil rights for all. It means La Raza, the race. The head of that group, when Obama became president, was Cecilia Munoz, M-U-N-O-Z. Obama had the nerve to bring this woman not to prison for what she had done by promoting race hatred in the country, but bring her into the White House to head up a council in the White House. And La Raza certainly became knowledgeable of the fact that we gringos were on to what they were doing, and so they changed the name of their group from La Raza to something less racist than that. Do you know any of this? I know what's going on. I don't forget these things. And to show you how deeply Bolshevik or Marxian reverse logic has penetrated our society, I want to refer to an article by a certain Latino gentleman. And this Latino gentleman, if we can honor him with that title, stated once that with the aging of the white population in California, he doubted whether the Latinos, who he says are taking back the state, will want to continue carrying the older whites on their backs. Listen to me. Of course, by Latinos, we know he means activist Bolshevik Hispanics and the illegals they are exploiting for their socialistic goals. You see, the majority of Hispanics, naturally, the loyal Hispanic Americans, don't count. But isn't this Bolshevik's statement interesting, especially the continue part of it? Those of us who are over 40 and not afflicted with Alzheimer's remember that until very recently, until the illegal invasion from south of the Rio, the overwhelming majority of citizens of this state were white, and they paid most of the taxes, and they built the state. The very taxes that are now paying for the services of our illegal friends, which are received free of charge. How is it then that these people are continuing to carry anyone, white, black, brown, or otherwise? God forbid that any of us, white or otherwise, should ever have to depend on them to carry us on their backs. Even though if we allow them to stay, maybe they owe us a debt of gratitude for letting them come here from the squalor of their homeland and receive free medical care, free education, free welfare, and other public services, which, by the way, whether you're illegal or illegal alien, are still paid for primarily by that cancer on the side of humanity, as you call us, white European Americans. We've all heard about the dog that bites the hand that feeds it. Maybe we've even had such a dog at home. How is the so-called Latino author of the above statement, and many others like him, any different? And here they are right in your home state. Right in your home state, and a disgrace to their own Hispanic heritage. He probably learned his Bolshevik logic in Chicano Studies 101 at one of our liberated state colleges. If they give any grades at all, I'll wager he got an A, like everyone else in his class, even those who didn't attend. And despite his successes at Chicano State, our so-called Latino friend and those like him became stunted at around 13. You know, the age where you mock everything, reason be damned. For example, why is he so proud of his Latino or Hispanic heritage, but then condemns the whites? Weren't the Latins and Spaniards white? Yes, I think they still are. Weren't they as guilty of cruelty in the settlement of the Americas as the Anglos and all the rest? Yes, they were, except in the Bolshevik history books at La Raza State. Or if he identifies with the American Indian part of his heritage, who are equally cruel to each other and the whites, then why does he call himself Hispanic? The man is definitely confused, and yet he and his ilk are trying to take over California and the entire Southwest. What is to be gained, I ask, by taking over the Southwest and turning it into another El Salvador or even a Tijuana? The border to the southern paradise is close, so if it's that what you want, why not just stay there or return there? It would save you a lot of trouble. This is the Savage Nation. We're living through a great hoax, being coaxed by the Bolsheviks and the universities. I'll be right back to take your calls right here on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. Well, the hatred of the white man is becoming a national sport promulgated by whites in the universities and in the media, which is really astounding. But how many years have I told you liberalism is a mental disorder? I was right up to a point. I should add a word. Liberalism is a suicidal mental disorder. And we're going to change it from liberalism to Bolshevism. And maybe tomorrow I'll explain what Bolsheviks and Bolshevism was. But that's what we're living through now, is a Bolshevik revolution. I want to continue by telling you about a caller I had from so-called La Raza and what's happened to the minds of so many children in this country from the indoctrination in our universities. During my radio talk show, I got a caller from KSFO in San Francisco. And the caller told me, quote, that the Hispanics were going to take over and make things like in the old days under the Aztecs. Well, I asked him what he thought of sacrificing innocent virgins on the altar of some pagan god or of a return to squalor under some Aztec king. The caller said it didn't matter, for, quote, we the whites would be gone and they, the Hispanics, would be in power. Well, I tried to reason with him, but the man was obviously a fanatic, a certified racist lunatic. Didn't Hitler want to return to worship of pagan Germanic gods? But our Latino friend should spare himself the trouble, because I told him I'd gladly pay for his fare to the Latin American jungle of his choice. It's all there waiting for him, ready-made. Even the sacrificial altars are still intact in Guatemala. This whole controversy is a hoax. Reconquista, they call it amongst themselves, and Aztlan. Well, what is it these self-appointed reconquistadores are going to reconquer? Are they the descendants of the native Californian Indians? How could they be if they're from south of the border? Those were different Indians down there, many of them hostile toward the California tribes. Or were their forefathers the Spanish settlers, the Alvarados, Picos, Verdugos, or Dominguezes of early California? Hardly. The descendants of the Spanish settlers have long become loyal Americans who contribute greatly to our society. So how can brown racists like our Latino friend take back what they never had in the first place? What they really have in mind is conquest, not reconquest. Their virulent hatred of the white man belies their claim that racism is limited to whites. In fact, the Ku Klux Klan could learn a thing or two from them. And if you buy into their illogic, you are more deranged than they are, Jake Tapper. In reality, if they have their way, what we will have here, Wolf Blitzer, is not a return to some idyllic paradise of the Indian past, but a tyrannic People's Democratic Republic of Aztlan, where we will, Hispanics and Indians as well, live on an all-inclusive government reservation under the boot of Big Sister. Friends, Hispanics, or whoever you are, it's time to get real. It's time to leave Aztlan and other people's liberation fantasies to the wiles of Hollywood, the media, the feds, the state colleges, and other fronts of Bolshevik delusion. We don't need them to show us truth. God and common sense will do that. If we are to have a reconquest of anything, let it be of the American Republic, where Hispanics and all of us can enjoy our constitutional rights as free individual American citizens. I'm Michael Savage, and I agree with my monologue. That's why I wrote it. So what do you want to talk about right now? I know what I've been talking about right now. Has anyone heard me? Does anyone hear? Does anyone see? Can anyone see anything anymore? Or are their minds made up? I doubt it. It's as though I'm painting a Jackson Pollock painting, and people are still looking at black and white daguerreotypes. Well, I'm not giving you a daguerreotype of talk radio. I'm giving you a Jackson Pollock of talk radio. Maybe you can't follow the drips. I don't know. Maybe you just don't want the drips. Maybe the modern art is too much for the average audience. But I'll do what I do the way I've been doing it and see what happens. Okay? Lenny on WABC, you've been very patient. Line 5, go ahead, please, from New York City. What's on your mind?
Hi, I'm a Russian immigrant. I immigrated here from the Ukraine in 1992 with my entire family. I'd just like to say that my great-grandfather fought during the Russian Revolution, and my great-uncle fought during Stalingrad. They fought under the hammer and sickle. That does not make them communists. They hated communism. They were forced to fight because the Nazis invaded. I believe the lonely Confederate foot soldier is the same way, that because the North invaded their territory, they were forced to fight for their land.
Okay, that's probably a truth. But the North invaded when after the South seceded. That's number one. But number two, the Robert E. Lee statue is quite a separate symbol, is it not?
Correct. Yes, absolutely. Robert E. Lee is one of the greatest American generals to ever fight for America.
Right. And as I taught my audience yesterday, including the ignoramuses who don't want to learn anything, when the Civil War broke out, President Lincoln offered the leadership of the Union Army to Robert E. Lee because he was so fabulous as a war leader. And Robert E. Lee decided to back the state militia of Virginia rather than fight his own people. So Robert E. Lee is the farthest symbol of racism imaginable. And yet the Bolsheviks are stirring up blacks in the South to tear down statues, causing great civil unrest. And the only thing that can save us is the immediate arrest of anyone who defames or destroys any statues whatsoever. Throw them in jail.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Welcome back to the Savage Nation. So here's a litmus test for people to see if they're Bolsheviks or truth seekers. Anytime someone from here on brings up the issue of slavery in their self-righteous indignation about Robert E. Lee statues, siding with the vandals and the criminals who are tearing statues down, illegally, by the way. By the way, you can argue that the statue should be removed, but there is a process for that. It's called a law. And when you have mob rule, the entire country loses. I want the mobs arrested. I want Antifa arrested across America. That it may just happen under Donald Trump. They're being empowered by Governor Brown in California, who looks the other way, as they beat people up and destroy property, block highways. They're vandals. They're criminals. Half of them are college professors who put on bandanas to feel strong and tough. And they join the rabble, the same kind of rabble that Hitler used to police the concentration camps. Make no mistake about it, these are dangerous fascists who are now ruling the streets of America because the Bolsheviks who run the states or the cities or the towns understand one thing very well. If they permit this activist class to riot in the streets, they can continue, that is, the politicians can continue to rob the treasury blind, with railroads to nowhere, with water works to nowhere, with solar fields in Nevada to nowhere. They can continue to get away with virtual murder as long as the activists are placated by being permitted to riot in the streets. I've said this for years, but it's more relevant today than it has been before. Again, the issue today is, of course, the statues of Robert E. Lee. They have become the flashpoint. And you have to ask yourself, do they belong in the South or not? If you say they don't, then there's a process to remove them. And the process is not mob rule. Because if you permit these radical Bolshevik mobs to make their own decisions with regard to tearing this down or that down, what is tomorrow? As Donald Trump said yesterday, I don't know whether he heard my show of the day before. Someone did. Who will be next? George Washington, Thomas Jefferson? Who will be after that? Mount Rushmore? Jackhammers? Bacala-clad vermin with jackhammers? When are you going to stop them? When will the government step in and stop them? We have a DHS. We have an FBI, and these domestic terrorist groups on the left need to be stopped yesterday before the country goes up in flames. So I've given you a lot of my opinion thus far, and I'll give you more of my opinion as the show goes on. The phone number is 855-407-2822. Let's take some calls. WDRC Radio, John, line 7. Go ahead, please.
Yes. I'm calling to voice my opinion about the removal of the statue. I'm a black person, and I'm appalled at the peoples in the South, the blacks in the South, who are being wind up like toy soldiers, and they going up there illegally pulling down statues. I want to know, where is Jesse Jackson at and Al Sharpton to stop this nonsense? Robert E. Lee was a fantastic general of the South. My parents come from the South, and all they have to say is good things about the South. And they was raised up in the 30s and in the 40s in the South. So I don't understand why these blacks are being so wound up. I wish I can get on CNN or Fox News and just cry out and just call out Jesse Jackson. And
John, you can't get on Fox News or CNN because they are run by Bolsheviks who do not want to hear a black with your opinion. As I have said for many years, when a black ceases to be a useful idiot of the Bolshevik whites who run the media, he is no longer a man of color. He becomes a non-person. It's the same with an Hispanic. It's the same with any gay who's not a Bolshevik. They are no longer useful tools of the Bolshevik left. I've said this. I've seen this for years. So, John, keep speaking out. It's all we've got left is dialogue. John, I'm going to send you a copy of Trump's War because right now Trump is really at war, and he's at war with his own party more so than anyone else. We always knew the Bolsheviks would hate him. We knew the deep state, meaning the spy agencies, would hate him. We knew that the Bolsheviks like Anderson Cooper, Wolf Blitzer, Jake Tapper would hate him. We knew that these elements would always be against him. But did you think his own party would turn on him? Did you think his own council of economic advisors would embarrass him like this? Well, big business abandons Trump. That's the headline on the Drudge Report. So the president reacted to it. They're all quitting. And they're saying, no, we don't want to be around him because he dared speak the truth. And they're all attacking him. And the president responded not by begging them, but by closing the business councils. He wished them well. The CEOs who were advising him are all gone. We'll see what happens next. Here's another headline. Mueller lost his top FBI investigator. That's an interesting story. Remember that story? Russia. It's no longer Russia. It's now Robert E. Lee. We've gone from Russia to Robert E. Lee. Special counsel's Russia probe loses top FBI investigator. What's that about? Why did he leave? The recent departure of FBI veteran Peter Strzok is the first known hitch in the secretive probe that, by all public accounts, is charging full steam ahead. Isn't that interesting? That's just after the Gestapo under Mueller kicked in the door of Paul Manafort and seized private records. Oh, I know he had a court order. He got some crackpot judge to permit it. But why is this man leaving? Why did this top FBI investigator step away from Mueller's black-shirted goons? It's filled with 24 goons who are trying to crucify Trump. Why did he leave? He has much law enforcement support. He's worked counterintelligence. He's been praised by government officials. And why did he quit? I don't know why he quit. Nobody knows why. Maybe he said that there's nothing there. And what has this investigation of Russia got to do with anything anyway? Nothing. And because they were losing that narrative, suddenly they found a new flashpoint. They found a new horse to ride, and that was Robert E. Lee. Isn't that interesting? They've gone from Russia to Robert E. Lee. Make no mistake about it, the Bolsheviks are very smart and very active. And they're not going to stop. WABC, Gary, line 1, go ahead. What's your comment?
Mr. Savage, first off, sir, I truly am grateful to the Lord of my understanding that man and people like you are out there, not to say a canary in a coal mine, but I'd consider you more of a Paul Revere. I believe...
Well, in 1994, when I started in radio, I created the Paul Revere Society. Someone then capitalized on that and did some children's books. God bless him. I don't own Paul Revere. But, yes, there is an element of this in the show. But, you know, we're trying to galvanize reason across the board of sex and race. And I don't know who's winning right now. I think that the Bolsheviks are winning.
I sadly must concur. But I'm fearful that they will not stop until blood is running in the streets.
Well, blood ran in the streets. They have their martyr. They have their Animal Farm funeral. They won't stop. There's going to be a movie. I'm sure Spielberg, Katzenberg, and Ratzenberg are already writing the script or having the script written. They have it already made. It's the next Matthew job. They're ready to go with the movie and the TV miniseries.
Star might be the executive producer. But, sir...
Who? Who could be the executive producer of this movie?
Well,
all right, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. It's listeners like you that make the Savage Nation so important. KLIF in Dallas, Texas. Jared, you're next up on the very busy Savage Nation. What's on your mind, Jared?
Hi, Dr. Savage. Thanks so very much for taking my call today. Just to pivot a little bit, you asked if slavery is relevant today, and slavery is as relevant today as it ever has been. I work for a nonprofit called Exodus Cry, and there are 150 billion humans human trafficked every year. 99.
Well, I know you're right. But here's the thing. Here's the litmus test for the Bolsheviks, who were screaming about slavery in America, which ended 150 years ago. Why were they silent when ISIS was invading cities and towns in the Middle East and enslaving Christian women and Yazidi women, turning them into sex slaves on an industrial scale? Where was Hillary Clinton then? Where was Bernie Sanders then? Where was Jake Tapper then? Where was Wolf Blitzer then? Where were all of these phony Bolsheviks then? The answer is nowhere. That's the litmus test. They're liars through and through. Thank you for the call. Yeah, Exodus. Good luck trying to tell that to the bigots out there. It's business as usual. Business as usual. Ben on WABC line 7. You're up on the Savage Nation from New York City. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Dr. Savage. Listen, I'm not a Republican or Democrat, anything like that, but I just think Confederate monuments and statues should be taken down simply for the fact that they lost the war, not because of any sentiment or anything like that. I mean, you lost the war, you shouldn't have them up. In other countries, anytime somebody loses a war, they don't get to fly their flag. And I think for that very reason, they should be taken down.
Right, let's say that your opinion is reasonable. Should they be ripped down by thugs with mob rule, or should it be done through legislation?
It should 100% be done with legislation.
Well, good. Then arrest those who are defacing statues and pulling them down. Throw them in jail. Because if we descend to mob rule, where does it end?
It doesn't. And you're
All right, so there are many people who would agree with you who are not even Bolsheviks. They would say all it does is keep a soreness. By the way, yesterday on the show, I informed America and the world that Robert E. Lee himself said he did not want any statues erected in his name. Did you know that?
I didn't know that, and I would assume that.
Robert E. Lee was such a great man. Robert E. Lee was such a great man and so fair-minded that when he was approached to have statues built in his memory after the Civil War, he said, don't do it. All it will do is agitate people. Did you know that?
I would imagine. I did not.
Well, I'm just saying there are things that you learn on a show like mine because I am a student of history. Otherwise, we're just useless to each other if we spout lies, as I heard this morning from someone who said America was the first nation to end slavery. That's the biggest lie I ever heard in the history of radio.
No, Dr. Savage, I understand, but what do you think about my statement? Do you think that it should be taken down for the simple fact that they lost the war?
My personal opinion, I'm not sure, because I'm not a Southerner, nor am I black. I'm a northern boy from New York City, and I now live in California, and I've lived here forever. I don't have an opinion on the Robert E. Lee statue. I have an opinion on law and order. How's that?
I think that it's just...
All right, let's say we take down Robert E. Lee. What's tomorrow for the radical left? George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. You want to go to Mount Rushmore next and jackhammer it out?
They didn't lose the war.
Well, you could jackhammer some of the people off Mount Rushmore, couldn't you?
No.
You could put up a marble statue of Al Sharpton on Mount Rushmore. That might be fitting. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. It is the Savage Nation. Sooner or later, your car's going to break down. If you have an older car, listen to me. It's a fact every car, truck, and SUV owner knows. If you're lucky, it happens while still under the manufacturer's warranty, and the repairs are covered. But what if it happens after the warranty expires? You could be out of pocket thousands to get it fixed. That's why I recommend getting extended coverage from CarShield.com. A new engine or new tranny could cost you over $5,000. Even a simple repair to a sensor today can cost you over $1,000. Trust me, I know. Skip that hassle. CarShield makes the whole process easy. You select your favorite mechanic, or you could even go to the dealer to do the work. And there's no waiting for the check in the mail or waiting for reimbursement. CarShield gets the mechanic paid directly. This is a great, great product. CarShield's administrators even give you the VIP treatment, providing 24/7 roadside assistance and a rental car while yours is in the shop, so you're not left stranded in the cold. So listen to me. If your car is 3 to 12 years old, it doesn't mean you have to pay high repair bills. CarShield administrators have paid out close to $2 billion in claims, and they're ready to help you. They're a real company. They're really reliable. Save yourself thousands of potential car repairs. Get covered by the ultimate and extended vehicle service protection before it's too late. All you got to do is call 800-CAR-6100. That's 800-CAR-6100 and code SAVAGE, or visit carshield.com. Use code SAVAGE to save 10%. That's carshield.com, code SAVAGE. A deductible may apply. Today we're talking about America today, how the Bolsheviks in the media, how the Bolsheviks in Hollywood, how the Bolsheviks in the universities, or as an African-American caller just said, winding up blacks throughout the South over an issue that's no longer relevant. And I've tried to tell you that this is very dangerous, and only compromise can save us from a further civil war. You've got to warn but Wolf Blitzer, Anderson Cooper, Mad Cow, all of them, to cool it. And you've got to tell their bosses. You've got to tell the people who run them, the Pill Griffins, the CNN troublemakers. There's got to be a limit to what you can do to boost ratings. It's not okay to stir people up to riot. It's not okay to stir people up to tear down statues. It may raise your ratings, but you're raising the nation. And you should be responsible enough to understand that there are consequences to what you are doing. And it's just liable to happen very quickly that the media is finally calling the carpet for what they're doing to stir up trouble in this country. Booker T. Washington was quoted today. I'll quote him again. One of the great, great, great African-American leaders, a man who was actually born into slavery. There's not a black alive today in America who was actually a slave. He was. He worked in a salt mine after emancipation, and he decided that education was his future. And he saw what was going on. He saw the agitators even in his time. And he said this, Booker T. Washington. He said, and I'm quoting now, if you don't like it, then take it up with him. Maybe you can burn Booker T. Washington's books. He wrote, there is another class of colored people who make a business of keeping the troubles, the wrongs, and the hardships of the Negro race before the public. Having learned that they're able to make a living out of their troubles, they have grown into the settled habit of advertising their wrongs, partly because they want sympathy and partly because it pays. End quote. Booker T. Washington. If you don't like it, go to a library and pull the book out and see if you can burn it, maybe. Burn the book because it has a, let us say, inconvenient fact for you. My friends were in trouble in this country. It started not with Obama. It started long before Obama. Where does it end is the question. It ends with you. You oppose mob rule. You discuss removing the statues rationally. And if the state decides to remove the Robert E. Lee statues, they do it legislatively. That's it. Arrest the troublemakers. Arrest Antifa now.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage. Warning: the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, the Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, winner of the National Radio Hall of Fame Award, Michael Savage.
Was George Washington a slave owner? So will George Washington now lose his status? Are we going to take down, are we going to take down statues to George Washington? How about Thomas Jefferson? What do you think of Thomas Jefferson? You like him? Okay, good. Are we going to take down the statue? Because he was a major slave owner. Now, we're going to take down his statue. So you know what? It's fine. You're changing history. You're changing culture.
That's right. The president was right. He has the guts to stand up to the Bolsheviks. I said it yesterday. I'll say it again today. He's the first president who's not intimidated by the Bolsheviks in the media. And, of course, you know who the Bolsheviks are. We don't have to name them by name. And they are the purveyors of dissent in the United States of America. When I say dissent, I don't mean in a positive sense. They are purveyors of hatred. The media is the problem. The medium is the message. And, frankly, the president is standing up to them. Now, I know that there are controversial points that I've made today. And the phone number here is 855-407-282. There are too many points I've made for me to focus on any one of them, but maybe you've heard something that you liked or didn't like. And, of course, talk radio being the greatest avenue for dialogue in America today. Left, right, or center, I invite you to call. There's one open line at 855-407-282. I asked one main question today. It's up on Twitter. Let's see, what is my Twitter thing? I don't even know. I only started it when Trump started it. After criticizing it, I figured if you can't beat him, join him. My Twitter handle is at a Savage Nation, at capital A Savage Nation. And I asked, is slavery still relevant today on Twitter? I didn't tell you what to think. You can engage. Anyone can engage, whether you agree with me, disagree with me, just like talk radio. The difference between Twitter and talk radio is that we actually dialogue. Talk in Twitter or Facebook, you don't dialogue. And most people said, yeah, slavery is relevant today because it's still ongoing in the Middle East. It's still ongoing in Muslim countries. It's still ongoing in India. And human trafficking is modern-day slavery, and it's in the United States. And you don't hear one word about it from Governor McAuliffe, not one word about human slavery from Hillary Clinton, the great champion of women, not one word of it from Jesse Hyde Jackson, not one word of it from any of the race baiters. Someone wrote, yeah, slavery is relevant today. It is with people whose minds are enslaved by liberalism, which we now call Bolshevism. Another one says we're all slaves to the national debt and our corporate masters. Another one says, yes, it's relevant when thousands of children go missing every year. Another one says, no, it's just a tool for sustaining and expanding victimhood by modern-day hustlers. It's much worse than that. Another one says, slavery, yes, taxes have no skin color. The real slavery of all colors, stealing our earnings while undermining our homeland and its future. tax cuts for all. So we have divisiveness going on right now, and it's coming from the Bolsheviks on the left. Make no mistake about it. They're using the march by the right-wingers, some of whom were Nazis, some of whom were KKK, some of whom were not, some of them were just Southerners, period. But they've all been painted as Nazis. That is what they do on the left. That's what the Bolsheviks like Jake Tapper and Wolf Blitzer do. They're naked propagandists. In another era, they were called yellow journalists. They are the type of people who inflamed the nation. They're the type of people who brought us to wars in the past. Let us hope they do not bring us to wars in the future. Now let's take some calls on the Savage Nation. It's KFAQ Radio in Oklahoma. Let's hear from Oklahoma on the National Savage Nation. Travis, go ahead, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'd like to have your opinion on this. I would like to argue that movies about slavery and racism, it seems like there's been a lot that have come out lately, are fueling the fire right now.
Oh, yeah, an awful lot. Absolutely. Matzenberg, and Ratzenberg, they know what sells. Outright murder wasn't selling anymore, so now they have to stir up race hatred in America. Any other questions?
I think the left is using...
I mean, just all the almighty dollar. That's all they understand in Hollywood. They make believe that they're for the people. They're not for the people.
Right. I feel like Americans aren't mature enough to handle these movies right now. You know, why
you can't stop the Hollywood moguls. You can't stop the Hollywood czars from making any movie they want. The ultimate determinant of a movie is who will go to it and how many people will sit in the seat and watch it. If stirring up racism works, I can guarantee you that the Hollywood boys will do more of them, not fewer. You think they're going to listen to reason? They know they're not going to be affected by any civil disobedience or riots. They live behind gates in Beverly Hills. What do they care? Yeah, absolutely. I know what you're saying. So when I say the media and I focus on the news media, of course Hollywood has a great role to play in this hatred. And I thank you for that observation because you're not alone. Just understand you're not alone. What about I don't really get stuck on the Robert E. Lee statue again because there's laws on the books. If a state decides in the assemblies of the states to take down statues owing to a vote or roll call, they do it. They move it. Put it up somewhere else and a private collector could buy it. But if you let radicals throw a rope around the statue and pull it down, then you're letting mob rule in America, and they will not stop. These maniacs, these evil leftists will not stop. Oh, they may be egged on by nice-looking white professors at the universities. You understand they're not on the front lines, don't you? All those nice old white women from the academies in Charlottesville. You seen who was in the mob on the other side? Did you see who was on the front lines and who were in the back egging them on? Did you see all of the white-haired men, the white-haired little old ladies from the universities egging on the violent ones in the front? Did you see who was egging them on, or as the black caller said, winding them up? Did you see this? Do you understand that there's a Bolshevik element in America, whether it be the Nation magazine coming out of New York or any of the far-left Bolshevik publications? They are all trying to cause a revolution in the United States of America. And ironically, or not so ironically, a listener just sent me an email and said, yes, Dr. Savage, you are correct about the Bolshevik analogy, because exactly 100 years ago this year, in the year of 1917, there was the Bolshevik Revolution. And secretly and under the surface, the Bolsheviks around the world are trying to instigate riots all over the world right now. And who are they using? Who are they using? Who are these white Bolsheviks using? Who are they winding up? I'll let you figure it out. Be very careful what you wish for, because none of us will win if there is any furtherance to this civil war that is brewing. It must be stopped, and the only way to stop it is through dialogue and reason. And frankly, I hope that talk radio can play a role in that. Maybe by my reading the quote of a man like Booker T. Washington, as I've done several times in the last 2 hours, a man who was actually a slave as opposed to the fakers who were never enslaved. Booker T. Washington actually was a slave on a plantation. And he wrote some things. He wrote great things. He was a great black leader. And it wasn't good enough for the people who formed the NAACP. They wanted more confrontation. He tried to warn them that confrontation will lead to the reverse of what you want. The NAACP is a very interesting organization, but for 1 second do not believe they're on the same side of peace as Booker T. Washington was. And so who was it who started this whole thing in the South? Take a look at it, and you will see the genesis of this series, these series of conflagrations that are occurring all over again. I think I've said all I want to say on this topic for the day. I don't want to repeat myself over and over again. I'll let you do some of the calling and talking. WGOW in the deep south of Tennessee, line 4. Go ahead, please. You are on the Savage Nation. What is your opinion, my friend?
Yes, Dr. Savage, this is Ben. And basically I want to say something about the statues themselves. An earlier caller had said the statue should be taken down because the South had lost. And it's a unique situation. The statues are still up, and I agree to that. Those statues were actually put together probably at least 20 years after the war by daughters, by widows, by mothers. And there were drives for money, drives to raise a certain amount of money to put these statues up in the squares in front of courthouses, things of that nature, for these fallen men, these men who did die defending their homes, defending their states, trying to make sure that they could provide for their family and defend their homeland.
Right, and most of the Southerners did not fight because they wanted to maintain slavery. In fact, most of them were very poor. Most of the soldiers were poor in the South, as they were in the North. As usual, the poor are the ones who take the bullets for the rich. But the fact of the matter is, they lost the war. You are a Southerner. Do you think that memories of the Civil War are still important?
I certainly do. They teach us about the future. They teach us about here and now. They teach us that tyranny exists, and that the best.
Well, do any of the listeners who are listening to this show know what the Northern General did when he marched through the South? Why don't you tell them what General Sherman did when he came through the South? Tell them about the time he burnt Atlanta to the ground. Is that a piece of history that should be discussed?
It certainly should, and that's what happened to Atlanta. But even closer to home for me, we have a journal from our old family homestead. This is up in Lafayette, Georgia, between Chattanooga and Atlanta, where soldiers came through in the Chattanooga campaign, came to this poor little farmhouse, not a slave there, not a big plantation there, but just a small family. It was an older lady and a couple of daughters who were there, and these soldiers came through, took all their food, found some molasses, poured it on the floor, took pillows and punched holes in the pillows and basically tarred and feathered the house. Took all their food, just scared the little girls to death. Just took everything they had and kind of harassed them. They were just fortunate they didn't burn down.
Well, yes, the Northern armies lived off the land. They lived off by pillaging. But more importantly, the point I'm trying to make is there was a Northern general, I believe it was Sherman,
right,
who had a long march through the South, who burnt one city after the other in the South. Should every statue to General Sherman, a Northern general, be removed as well?
There's one going into Central Park. The last time I was in...
Well, I don't know. I haven't heard anyone in the media, all these intelligent, educated people, talk about the atrocities committed by Northern generals as they march through the South. Why are they seen as liberators instead of seen as the warmongers that they were? Why did he have to burn Atlanta to the ground?
Right. Well, that's something for the...
And he did it for a reason. It was not just Atlanta. It was many southern cities were burned to the ground by General Sherman. The point is they did it to intimidate and terrify the population. They were the terrorists of their time. They were very much like ISIS. They raped, they pillaged, they burnt. And the fact of the matter is, if you want to start in with General Lee, then take down all of the statues of the Northern generals who were monster-like. That's all I can say. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. Here's a late-breaking story. Trump's Interior Department won't be removing Confederate monuments from Civil War battlefields, will not be removing them. In fact, they put out a statement, and they said the National Park Service is committed to safeguarding these memorials while simultaneously educating visitors holistically and objectively about the actions, motivations, and causes of the soldiers and states they commemorate, according to the Interior Department. The statement came after a woman was killed counter-protesting a white supremacist rally in Charleston, Virginia. The city had voted to remove a statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee, and then a man driving a Dodge Challenger, poor Dodge, drove into a crowd of counter-protesters, killing one and injuring 19 others. Now, the driver, James Alex Fields, has not been discussed in enough detail on this program. Did you know anything about the driver of the car? Did you know he may have been an agent provocateur? It is known he was a member of Occupy Movement, which is a left-wing group. I believe he was a supporter of Hillary. Am I mistaken? He was a Democrat for sure, wasn't he? Well, we have to look into these things. The government media complex, the Bolsheviks won't tell you that one. But I believe the whole thing was not the whole rally, not at all. I believe the driver of this car was an agent provocateur set up by the Bolshevik media and the Bolshevik government left in order to bring about the horrors that happened, the death that happened, in order to bring hatred to those who were marching. So Trump got into it with the vermin on the Bolshevik left, and I believe Trump was trying to unite America. I believe Trump was trying to be a compromiser by saying there both sides have some blame to go around. Why is that a wrong statement? You mean because you hate somebody, you have a right to attack them? No, not in this country. Gettysburg, Pennsylvania now is next. 12 monuments to Confederate soldiers. The Battle of Antietam, which took place near Sharpsburg, Maryland, in 1862, has 6 Confederate monuments. Gettysburg is next. And so who knows what's going to happen next with the radical Bolsheviks on the march. They're trying to rewrite history. They don't understand that the best way to teach our children the importance of banishing fascism is by talking about fascism, including their own. WMAC Radio in Georgia, line 5. Go ahead, please.
Hey, Dr. Savage, first-time caller, long-time listener. I just wanted to say thank you so much for everything you're doing for our country. I think you are one of the most important people to the survival of our country. So I just wanted to say thank you very much before I get to my point.
I'm waiting. Make the point.
I was listening to some. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. The previous callers talked about an interesting issue. I'm kind of like you. I'm not too opinionated one way or the other about Confederate statues or Confederate flags. I grew up in Northern Virginia. I saw Confederate flags on the backs of pickup trucks. I never really thought about it. I used to laugh about the fact that they were on the losing team, so why would they want to wave their flag around? But I had some Southern friends, and they explained why they waved it, and I understood it. So,
well, why did they wave it? Tell it. I'm a Northerner by birth and upbringing. Why do they wave the Confederate flag? What's that about?
Well, everyone's got different opinions, but some of my Southern friends were basically just trying to memorialize the fact that their ancestors had fought in the war, and they were trying to honor them because that's, it's kind of like honoring your great-granddad. Yeah,
I understand it. And the thing to remember is not everyone who fought on the side of the Confederates was a Nazi or a fascist, or they were not fighting for slavery. They were fighting because they were forced to fight. They were conscripted into the army. They had to fight.
Yep,
Does anybody understand that? Many of these were very brave men on both sides. The poorest of the poor were forced to fight and die. You know that there were draft riots in New York City, mainly amongst the Irish communities because so many of them were dying. So many Irish were being conscripted into the armies of the North and were dying that they were draft riots in New York City. A very important point. Not every Northerner wanted to fight either, by the way. Very, very big history here. We have to talk about it. Is slavery still relevant today? Oh, it's very relevant, especially where it's still practiced, and that's not in America.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
About one question today, which is slavery still relevant today? There was a great African-American leader named Booker T. Washington. In fact, Booker T. Washington was perhaps the greatest black leader until perhaps Martin Luther King Jr., but in some ways Booker T. Washington did more. He was from the last generation of black American leaders born into slavery. He was actually born into slavery. And between 1890 and 1915, Booker T. Washington was the dominant leader in the African American community. He founded many things. He wrote great books. Mainly he talked about compromise. And, of course, he was opposed by the radical blacks and the radical commie whites. By the way, we no longer call them liberals. There will no one on this show who will call them will ever refer to the word liberal or socialist again. As of yesterday, I hereby declare all those on the left Bolsheviks. And soon you will hear the word Bolshevik being used repeatedly on all radio shows, as sure as I'm sitting here. We're watching a Bolshevik revolution occur in the United States of America. The leaders of it are very clear, and the Democrat Party is the Bolshevik Party of today. But anyway, getting back to Booker T. Washington, God, the time is so short. There's so much to do. Booker T. Washington was a very powerful man who wrote a great book, and as I said, born into slavery, emancipated, highly educated, and he was named the first leader of the new Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. He was a popular spokesman for African American citizens. He built huge support with black people, black ministers, educators, businessmen. And it kept growing and growing. National leaders, white and black, came to him. He raised funds, opened new small rural schools in the South. And Washington argued that the surest way for blacks to gain social rights was to demonstrate industry, thrift, intelligence, and property. Oh, my God, what a long way we've come. How far we've come, Jesse Hy Jackson. Demonstrating industry, thrift, intelligence, and property. But he was opposed by some blacks, especially the leaders of the new NAACP, who is now behind tearing down the Robert E. Lee statues. You see, the NAACP is not this benign group that you may think it is. Read about the NAACP, especially W.E.B. Du Bois, who were into heavy, heavy-duty protest. Now let's move on. He wrote 14 books, including Up From Slavery. Great book. It's still read in the schools today. And he warned that in order to overcome pervasive racism in the long run, we need to compromise. Yes, he funded litigation for civil rights cases. But he warned this, and listen carefully to me. All you Bolsheviks, we know who you are. We know what you're doing. Washington warned that confrontation will lead to disaster for the outnumbered blacks in society, and that cooperation with supportive whites was the only way to overcome pervasive racism in the long run. Listen to me very carefully. We do not want another civil war in this country, nor do you. If you are an agitator, if you are one of these college dumbbell agitators, be aware of something. Nobody wins in war. Now, Booker T. Washington is quoted widely. I'm going to read one quote that's very important for you to hear. This is Booker T. Washington. There is another class of colored people who make a business of keeping the troubles, the wrongs, and the hardships of the Negro race before the public. Having learned that they are able to make a living out of their troubles, they have grown into the settled habit of advertising their wrongs, partly because they want sympathy and partly because it pays. Boy, did he ever see Jesse Hy Jackson and Al Sharpton and the other race baiters. He certainly saw in his deep vision Barack Hussein Obama. Boy, did Obama cash in on something he never suffered from. And he's still cashing that check. He hasn't stopped yet. What else do you want me to say? You've got more in this opening 25 minutes that you're going to get than you're going to get anywhere else for the rest of the week. I can guarantee you. You got a dose of reality, a dose of history, a dose of futurism, and a dose of me. We're reliving the Civil War in America today because the radical left realizes the best way to antagonize the poor white man is by calling him a racist, calling him a Nazi, going from calling those of us who voted for Trump, now we've gone from deplorables to Nazi, we're all KKK members to them. This is really wonderful. Thank you, Bernie Sanders, you gutter rat, you. Thank you, Hillary Clinton, you loser, you. Thank you, Anderson Cooper, you faker, you. Thank you, Wolf Blitzer. I can't take it anymore. The whole media is consigned to the ash heap of lies. Are we now all fascists for wanting to make America great again? Should every Civil War monument be taken down? Should all the Ten Commandments monuments be removed from America because they offend every liberal in America? Look at the Ten Commandments. Every one of the Ten Commandments, every one of them is an affront to the Bernie followers. Thou shalt have no other God before me. Are you telling me the narcissists on the left believe that there's a God? Are you telling me that the Katzenberg, Hatzenberg, Matzenberg, and Ratzenberg brigades believe there is a God? Listen to number 2, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. Tell that to Hollywood. How about remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy? When was the last time you kept it holy? How about honor thy father and thy mother? Every other movie, every other comedy show is about ripping apart family. Number 6, thou shalt not kill. It's actually not the Hebrew word. The Hebrew word is not kill. It's murder. For those of you who think that it means thou shalt not kill, it means thou shalt not murder. I'll explain it to you another time. Here's number 7 of the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt not commit adultery. That doesn't fly very well in New York and L.A., does it? Thou shalt not steal. How does that work for a welfare system that steals my income? Thou shalt not bear false witness. The entire left wing is built on false witness. As far as thou shalt not covet, I would say that applies to all Americans. We all covet everything at all times. We're all jealous of the next person. That's the American way. Thou shalt have no other God before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Honor thy father and thy mother. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Thou shalt not covet. Those are the Ten Commandments, as you well know, written by a God who is seen as racist, sexist, and homophobic by the same leftists who are tearing down monuments to the Southern General Lee across America. And it's only a matter of time until these vermin on the left, these communist scum, are going to start tearing down the Ten Commandments across America. And I'm asking you, how much are you going to take of this? Where is the firewall of our police? The Charlottesville police should be investigated by the federal government, but I don't want to go into the scandal of what happened in the South. I want to talk about what's happening to this country. I want to talk about the deranged Nazi car terrorist and the fascist left. I want to talk about how anti-white rhetoric is fueling white nationalism. Rats on the left have ganged up on the president. How the stoners who pass for philosophers on late-night television, they're nothing but stand-up comedians who got a good agent. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. They've read other people's scripts their entire life. They're not known for any ideas of their own. Are we supposed to listen to them as they mock the president? These schmucks who don't know the time of day unless someone tells it to them. If they didn't have an iPhone, they couldn't add 2 and 16. Someone put this up. Americans who were never slaves are fighting Americans who were never Nazis over a Confederate statue erected by Democrats, because Democrats can't stand their own history anymore, and somehow it's Trump's fault. Thank you. So now they want to tear down every Ten Commandments monument. You say, no, that's not going to happen. It's already happening. The vermin in the ACLU, the Anti-Christian Liberty Union, every one of them hardcore communists, every one of them anti-American, pretending that they're Americans who protect the First Amendment. I wrote in my last book, Trump's War, the book before it, Government Zero, the book before that, Scorched Earth, the bestseller before that, Stop the Coming Civil War. I've had 5 best-selling books in a row, if not more. I can't even count them anymore. Every one of them winds up in the top of the New York Times list. Even a book about my dog, Teddy and me. Actually, that one didn't make the list. No, it did not. But my political books all become bestsellers. There's a big audience for reality. And the fact of the matter is, in each of these best-selling books, I stated that the head of the snake in this country, the head of all the problems in this country, is the ACLU. It is an unelected group of degenerate lawyers, every one of whom is an enemy of freedom, and that if I had the power, if I were an advisor to the president and I had the power, and if I were an advisor to Jeff Sessions, I would break the ACLU open like a can of worms using the RICO statutes. That's what I would do. The ACLU is the greatest danger to our freedom. They have fomented hatred in this nation from the day they were formed. But more to the point, the ACLU has sued over the last 30 years to take down every 10 Commandments monument on any public property in this nation. They have sued to break the crosses off war memorials, men 1,000 times better than the best one amongst them, their honor and their memory erased by the vermin, the drug-addicted vermin in the ACLU. It makes me so sad that no government official will stand up to these rats. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. And if you just tune in, you can take anything out of context. If you listen, you'll understand who I am and where I'm coming from. And let me repeat it again. I'll repeat it over and over again. The black people in America are now being used by the white communists or the Bolsheviks, more specifically. The Bolsheviks in the media, the Bolsheviks in academia, the Bolsheviks on the left are once again using black people, Hispanic people, and others to advance their Bolshevik agenda, to the detriment of all of us. Make no mistake about what I am saying. Listen very carefully to what I said. They are stirring up a hornet's nest, wanting riots, wanting mayhem, and wanting social dissolution. The left is relentless in its desire to burn and break things because they have a sick image that when you destroy everything, you rebuild it in your own image. That is what they're doing right now. And so what happened in Charlottesville is a symptom rather than the actual war. It's a symptom of the Bolshevik Revolution on both sides. And, of course, I don't want to go into who did what. It's unimportant. Just watch the footage yourself. And Trump was 1,000% right in saying there's enough blame to go around. And thank God he had the guts to stand up to the phonies in the media, the Bolshevik stooges. That's all I can say. I want to diverge for a moment. Last night I watched the second part of the Civil War on PBS. It was done in 1990. I watched it last. I couldn't watch the whole thing. I had to stop. I got as far as Shiloh, the Battle of Shiloh, a little country church. It was named for Shiloh, a Hebrew word for peace. I think 16,000 men died in one day at Shiloh during the Civil War. 16,000 innocent white boys killed each other. Killed each other in the north, killed each other in the south. Over what? I will tell you again so that you learn your history, because those of you who do not know your history are condemned to repeat it. Abraham Lincoln did not begin the Civil War to end slavery. Maybe that's what you think is true, but it's not true. Abraham Lincoln certainly opposed slavery. That's a given fact. But Lincoln initiated the Civil War because the South seceded from the Union. And Lincoln did not want secession. He did not want the Union broken up. And he said, we will fight at all costs to make sure there's no secession of Southern states. It was only after the war had begun and was not going well that Lincoln decided to make slavery the dominant issue of the Civil War in order to unify more people behind him, because it had become a very unpopular war. Too many northern boys were being slaughtered by this war. They were being shot down, mowed down like grass. And so you have to understand the reality of the Civil War to understand what you're talking about. Does it really matter at this point when we're living through another Civil War in America? Another Civil War promoted by Barack Obama and Eric Holder for 8 straight years? We didn't have enough of Jesse Hyde Jackson. We didn't have enough of that street rat Al Sharpton. Then we elected Obama. Who elected Obama? Mainly white people elected Obama because he said he was a uniter. He spent 8 straight years promulgating race hatred in the country, but in the most subtle way you can imagine. He was so good at it that while he was promoting racial division, he made believe he wasn't. And these days that we are living through now are, in my opinion, biblical in that there's a biblical statement, he who sows the wind shall reap the whirlwind. We are reaping and weeping the whirlwind of Barack Obama's 8 years of hatred. And it's time to quit it. Knock it off. Cut it out. Don't be manipulated. You college students, you're well-meaning. You think that you're doing good, but you're a stooge, you're a tool, you're a puppet of your communist Bolshevik professors. They're using you. You will not benefit from this civil unrest. Your careers will go nowhere. Your life will go nowhere. You'll make nothing of your life. Those of you who are of color, if you want me to put it to you that way, I hope that's sensitive enough, just understand you're being manipulated by the Bolsheviks again. It is the white Bolshevik professors who are using the African-American community to their own advantage of pushing the Bolshevik agenda. But this requires knowledge, this requires history, this requires civility, this requires reason, and I'm afraid those factors are no longer relevant to too many in this country. There are many other topics, including reading about the funeral for Boxer in Animal Farm, because the funeral today in Charlottesville, as sad as it is to see this young girl killed for no reason, I'm sorry to tell you, when I saw Terry McAuliffe and the commie professors getting up there with crocodile tears for a girl they never met, I thought I was watching a reenactment of Animal Farm, especially Chapter 9, The Death of Boxer, because the left always uses martyrdom and martyrs in order to push their Bolshevik agenda down our throat, don't they? Remember the Matthew Shepard story? This poor girl in Charlottesville is now the new Matthew Shepard. There will be a movie. There will be a TV series. Katzenberg, Matzenberg, and Ratzenberg are already working overtime, I am sure, to create an around-the-clock remembrance of this event in Charlottesville. Meanwhile, the slaves are suffering around the world. I think some are hearing me, but most aren't. I think people are so wrapped up in their victimhood in America today, they can't hear a word I'm saying.
Savage.